It started with rain, cold, endless, and unforgiving. But what happened in that storm would turn one forgotten boy's life into a miracle the whole city would never forget. That boy's name was Malik Carter, a 17-year-old from Detroit's East End, where every day felt like a test of survival. He didn't know it yet, but a single choice made in the next 10 minutes would rewrite his destiny forever. Malik stood beneath a flickering streetlight, his work uniform clinging to his skin, soaked through by the storm. In his pocket were 3 crumpled dollars and a single quarter, the last of what he had until payday. That money was supposed to buy his grandmother's heart medicine from the pharmacy. Home was 5 miles away. He could have taken the last bus if he didn't stop walking, but fate had a cruel way of testing the kind-hearted. Across the street, a small figure stood frozen in the chaos. A young blind girl, maybe 12, shivering in the downpour, her white cane tapping helplessly against the sidewalk. Hundreds of umbrellas rushed past her. Not one person stopped. Malik hesitated. For a second, his mind screamed all the reasons not to get involved. You'll miss your bus. Grandma's waiting. The storm's getting worse, but then he heard it. A small panicked voice crying, "Please, someone help me." That was it. Malik ran. Before that night, Malik's life had already been a storm. He'd lost both his parents in a car crash when he was 14. Since then, it had been him, his little sister Layla, and Grandma Thelma, who still called him baby boy even though he'd become the man of the house. Their apartment on Grayson Avenue was small, barely held together by tape and hope. The landlord had already taped a final warning to their door. 3 days late on rent again. Every morning at 5:15 a.m., Malik was up, making instant oatmeal with tap water and saving the milk for Layla. Every afternoon, he pushed through school too tired to focus but too determined to quit. And every night he stacked boxes and swept floors at Mason's Corner Grocery, earning $47.50 for 8 hours of labor. He never complained. Not once, because he'd made a promise to his mother the day she passed. You take care of your sister. You take care of Grandma. You don't ever stop being good no matter how bad life gets. Malik lived by that promise. Layla was 8 now, bright, curious, and too grown for her age. Her sneakers had holes patched with tape, and her backpack straps were held by safety pins, but she never said a word about it. She just hugged him every night and said, "Don't worry, Malik, I know you're trying." Grandma Thelma's health was failing. Diabetes, heart problems. But she always smiled, always saying, "God's watching over us, baby. You just keep doing right, even when the world don't." That's what made Malik stop when everyone else walked past that girl, even if it meant walking home through the storm. Even if it meant Grandma didn't get her medicine that night. The street was chaos. Rain pounded the pavement. Car horns screamed. A delivery truck hydroplaned, tires screeching as it tried to brake at the light. The girl, completely blind, trembling, lost, took one step forward. And that was all it took for Malik to sprint into the street. He didn't think. He just moved. "Hey, stop!" he shouted, grabbing her shoulders and pulling her backward just as the truck thundered past, missing them by inches. For a second, time froze. The truck's horn echoed through the night and Malik's heart slammed against his ribs. Then the girl collapsed into him, crying, her small hands clinging to his soaked uniform. Her name was Emily Turner. She was 12 years old. And she was terrified. I couldn't tell where I was," she stammered, shaking. "My driver, he had a heart attack and then people just kept walking past me." Malik wrapped his thin jacket around her, though it barely covered her shoulders. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. We'll get you home." She nodded weakly, trusting the voice of a stranger who had nothing to give except his kindness. "Where do you live?" he asked. "Briarfield Heights," she said between sobs. Malik froze. That was almost an hour away, the richest part of Detroit. He'd never been there in his life. He looked at his pocket, then at the storm raging around them. $3.25, exactly enough for 2 bus fares. If he spent it on her, he'd have to walk home in the freezing rain. His phone buzzed, a text from Grandma. "Baby, the rain's bad. Don't be late. Pick up my medicine if you can." His chest tightened. This was it, the kind of moment that separates who you are from who you pretend to be. He looked down at Emily, her wet hair sticking to her face, her lips trembling. And he knew what he had to do. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you home." He guided her to the bus stop, the storm soaking them both to the bone. When the bus finally screeched to a stop, the driver glanced at Malik suspiciously. "She yours?" the man asked. "No," Malik said quietly. "She's lost." The driver hesitated, then nodded. "Get in, kid." "No charge." Malik shook his head. He placed $3.25 on the counter anyway. "Thank you," he said. "But I can pay." The driver stared at him for a long moment, then waved them both on. As they sank into their seats, Malik's mind was heavy, but his heart was light. Emily turned toward him, her eyes still red from crying. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Malik smiled faintly. "Because no one else did." She tilted her head. "But you didn't even know me. You didn't need to be known to deserve help." That answer silenced her. As the bus rolled through the city, Emily began to talk about her school, her parents, her home filled with expensive furniture and silence, about how no one ever really saw her as a person, just as a problem to manage. Malik listened quietly. He told her about Layla's taped shoes and Grandma Thelma's medicine. For the first time that day, Emily stopped crying. "Do you ever get tired of helping people?" she asked. Malik looked out the window at the pouring rain. "Sometimes," he said, "but I never regret it." When the bus finally reached Briarfield Heights, the difference was shocking. The cracked streets and flickering lights of East End gave way to gated mansions and spotless roads. Even the rain seemed gentler here. "That's my house," Emily said, pointing toward a massive brick estate with iron gates. Malik froze for a second. It didn't even look real. But before he could say anything, Emily reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet. "Please," she said, offering him several folded bills. "You used your last money for me." Malik shook his head. "I didn't help you for money," he said softly. "You needed someone. That's all." Emily frowned, confused. "Most people don't say no to money." "I'm not most people." He smiled and turned to leave, already preparing himself for the long, cold walk home. But Emily wasn't done yet. As Malik turned to leave, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the mansion gates and the storm that still refused to stop. He tightened his jacket around his shoulders, preparing for the long, freezing walk back to the East End. "Wait," Emily called out, her voice trembling, not from fear this time, but something else, gratitude. "Please don't go yet." "My parents, they'll want to meet you." Malik smiled faintly. "They don't need to. You're safe, that's enough for me." But before he could take another step, a man's voice shouted from the mansion, "Emily!" Two figures rushed through the rain, her parents. Her mother, tall, elegant, panic written all over her face. Her father, stern and commanding, but visibly shaken. They swept Emily into a hug so tight she gasped for air. Her father turned toward Malik. "Did you bring her home?" "Yes, sir," Malik said quietly. "She was lost near Westfield Avenue." Her father's expression softened. "You walked her here?" "In this storm?" Malik hesitated. "I took the bus part of the way." Emily tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad, he spent all the money he had just to make sure I got home safe. And he wouldn't even take mine." Her father looked at Malik again, really looked at him this time. The soaked clothes, the worn shoes patched with duct tape, the exhaustion hiding behind his calm eyes. "What's your name, son?" he asked. "Malik Carter." "Well, Malik Carter," the man said slowly. "I think you've done something remarkable tonight." But Malik only shook his head. "Anyone would have done it." "No," Emily said softly. "They wouldn't have." Her mother placed a hand on Malik's arm. "Please come inside. You're drenched." But Malik stepped back. "Thank you, ma'am, but my grandmother's waiting. I need to get home." And before they could insist, he turned and started down the long, rain-soaked road, alone. Behind him, Emily's father watched in silence, then said to his wife, "Find out who that boy is." 3 hours later, Malik stumbled through his apartment door, soaked, freezing, and trembling. The lights flickered overhead. Half the city had lost power in the storm. Grandma Thelma was waiting, her eyes wide with worry. "Lord have mercy, Malik. You could have caught your death out there." "I'm okay," he said, trying to smile. "Just help someone get home." Layla ran to him, wrapping her tiny arms around his waist. "You smell like the rain," she said, wrinkling her nose. He laughed quietly. "It's the new cologne, ode a thunderstorm." Even Grandma smiled at that, but when he pulled the empty wallet from his pocket, her smile faded. "You didn't get my medicine?" His head dropped. I'll get it tomorrow, I promise. I just couldn't leave her there. She sighed softly, touching his cheek. You did the right thing, baby. Kindness don't always feed you, but it keeps your soul alive. The next morning, strange things started happening. Turner, Emily's last name. Malik's stomach tightened, but he said nothing. By Friday, even their landlord had changed his tone. Hey, Malik, he said, avoiding his usual bark. Someone came by asking if your rent was current. Said they might cover it. You got friends I don't know about? Malik just stared at him, speechless. That evening, as he stocked shelves at the grocery store, the bell over the door jingled. He looked up and froze. Standing there, completely dry and glowing under the fluorescent lights, was Emily Turner. Beside her stood a tall man in a dark overcoat. Her father. Hey, Malik, Emily said, smiling shyly. He nearly dropped the box he was holding. Emily, what are you doing here? Her father stepped forward and extended a hand. I'm David Turner, he said. Emily's father. Malik shook it nervously. Nice to meet you, sir. We owe you more than thanks, David said. You saved my daughter's life, and we've spent the last few days learning about yours. Malik frowned. About mine? Emily stepped closer. Dad runs something called the Turner Family Foundation. They help kids who've been through tough times. Kids who don't give up, David nodded. We read about your grades, your job, how you take care of your family. Frankly, son, I've never met someone your age who's handled that kind of responsibility. I just do what I have to, Malik murmured. David smiled faintly. And that's exactly why we want to help you. He placed a folder on the counter. Thick, official, embossed with a gold seal. Inside are the details for a full scholarship to Michigan State University engineering program. Full tuition, housing, meals, everything. Malik stared at the folder like it might disappear. I don't understand. It's real, Emily said. I asked Dad if we could do it. You told me on the bus you liked building things. Now you can build a whole new life. Malik shook his head, tears burning behind his eyes. I can't accept this. David placed a hand on his shoulder. You already earned it. You didn't just save my daughter. You showed this city what character looks like. Malik tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Then Emily handed him something small, a silver keychain, engraved with the words kindness never forgets. My grandpa gave this to my dad, she said. Now it's yours. That night, Malik walked home through quiet streets, the keychain clutched in his hand. The rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement like stars. When he opened the apartment door, Grandma Thelma was sitting in her chair, humming softly. Layla was asleep on the couch. He dropped the envelope onto the table. What's that? Grandma asked. Malik smiled through the tears he'd been holding back. Our miracle. He told her everything. The foundation, the scholarship, the support they'd offered. By the time he finished, Grandma's hands were trembling. Baby, she whispered. You see what happens when you do right by people? The world may forget your name, but God don't. The next morning, everything changed. A car pulled up outside their crumbling building, a sleek black sedan with the Turner Foundation logo on the door. They'd come to take them to the headquarters downtown. For the first time in years, Malik put on a shirt without holes, one he'd ironed carefully the night before. He looked at himself in the mirror, nervous but hopeful. Layla bounced at the doorway, holding Grandma's hand. Are we really going to a big building with glass walls? Yeah, Malik said, smiling. This time it's for us. As they stepped out into the morning sun, Malik didn't know yet just how much bigger this miracle was going to get, because what the Turners had planned next would not only change his life, it would transform an entire city. When the black sedan pulled up in front of the Turner Foundation's glass building, Malik felt like he'd stepped into another world. The skyscraper shimmered in the morning light, its marble steps spotless, its glass walls reflecting the whole city back at him. He had never been inside a place that clean, that quiet, that important. Go on, baby, Grandma Thelma whispered, her hand trembling in his. You walk in there with your head high. You belong wherever good people are needed. Layla squeezed his other hand, her tiny smile bursting with pride. Don't be scared, Malik. You already saved a whole person. The doors slid open and cool air brushed across their faces. Inside, everything gleamed. A grand chandelier hung above a reception hall filled with soft light. People in suits greeted them with warm smiles, holding clipboards and coffee cups. But it was Emily who came running across the floor, waving excitedly. "You made it," she said, nearly colliding with him. "Dad's waiting upstairs." Malik couldn't stop smiling. "You sure this is all real?" "Very real," Emily said, tugging his sleeve. "And you're going to find out just how real in about 5 minutes." They entered a wide conference room overlooking the Detroit River. At the far end of the table sat David and Claire Turner, Emily's parents. Behind them, a massive banner read, "Celebrating the Power of Kindness." "Welcome, Mr. Carter," David said, rising to shake his hand. "Or should I say, future engineer?" Malik laughed nervously. "Sir, I'm just a grocery boy from the East End." "Not anymore," Claire said gently. "You're the young man who reminded us that goodness still exists in this city." David gestured toward a stack of folders on the table. "Before we start, I need to tell you something. You weren't chosen because of pity, Malik. You were chosen because of proof. Proof that character still matters." He opened one of the folders and turned it around so Malik could see his own name printed in bold letters. Beneath it were pages filled with notes from his teachers, managers, and neighbors. Reliable. Honest. Never asks for help. Tutors other students for free. Malik blinked fast, trying to focus, his throat tightening. "How did you get all this?" he whispered. David smiled. "We asked, and everyone answered." He went on. "The Turner Foundation was created 70 years ago after my grandfather was helped by a stranger during the Great Depression. That stranger's kindness saved our family, and we've spent generations trying to repay that debt to the world. You, Malik, are exactly the kind of person my grandfather believed in." Claire slid a second folder toward Grandma Thelma. "This is for you, ma'am. Medical coverage for your diabetes, a new apartment in a safer neighborhood, and a monthly allowance so you can live comfortably while Malik studies." Grandma gasped, clutching the folder to her chest. "Lord above. Is this real?" "It's more than real," Claire said. "It's deserved." Layla, wide-eyed, looked from one adult to another. "Does this mean Grandma doesn't have to skip her medicine anymore?" "No, sweetheart," Claire said, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Your grandma can take all her medicine and rest easy now." Layla grinned. "Then maybe we can all have ice cream tonight." Everyone laughed softly, and for the first time in years, Malik saw his grandmother smile without worry behind it. But the surprises weren't over. David opened another folder and said, "This isn't just a scholarship, Malik. We're offering you a place in our Future Leaders program. It's a full ride to Michigan State, plus summer internships, a personal mentor, and guaranteed job placement when you graduate." Malik stared down at the document as if it might vanish. "I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Emily said, grinning. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes. "I was supposed to be working at that grocery store for the rest of my life." David shook his head. "You were supposed to be found." After the meeting, they toured the foundation's gallery, walls lined with photographs of past recipients. Doctors, teachers, entrepreneurs, engineers, and community leaders, all people whose lives had been transformed by a single act of kindness. "This wall's missing a space," Emily said, pointing to a blank frame. "That's where yours is going, Malik." He smiled shyly. "I'll try not to mess up the pattern." "Don't you dare," she said, nudging him. Then David said something that made Malik stop walking. "You should know, we've also decided to cover Layla's education. Private school tutoring, anything she needs to follow her dreams. And if she still wants to be an astronaut..." "She does," Layla shouted immediately. David chuckled. "Then we'll make sure the stars aren't too far out of reach." Malik covered his face with his hands for a second, overwhelmed. "You don't have to do all this." Claire touched his shoulder. "We know. But you did what you didn't have to do either." By that afternoon, the papers were signed. The Carter family was officially part of the Turner Foundation legacy. As they left the building, reporters had already gathered outside, word spreading fast through the city. Someone shouted, "Are you the boy who saved the blind girl?" Malik froze. He wasn't used to cameras, to microphones shoved in his face, to questions that felt too big for him. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I just saw someone who needed help." But his story had already caught fire. Within 24 hours, news outlets across Michigan were running headlines. "Teen spends last $3 to save blind girl. Receives life-changing reward." His photo was everywhere, standing awkwardly beside Emily, still in his worn work shirt, eyes downcast and humble. What Malik didn't know was that his story was about to travel far beyond Detroit. People across the country were about to hear his name, and the message he lived by was about to change thousands of hearts. That night, the Carters moved into their new apartment, a clean, sunny 3-bedroom on a quiet street. The smell of fresh paint and new furniture filled the rooms. Layla ran through the hallway screaming, "My own room! My own room!" Grandma Thelma sat on the couch, tears streaming silently. "I haven't slept in a bed this soft in 40 years, she whispered. Malik stood by the window watching the city lights. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver keychain Emily had given him. Kindness never forgets. He thought about the old apartment, the dark night studying under a streetlight, the taste of watered-down oatmeal, the storm, the choice he'd made without thinking. One act of kindness had opened a door that would never close again. But the story was still unfolding. The ripples were only beginning to spread, and soon Malik would learn that his single moment of compassion would not only rebuild his own life, it would begin to heal a city that had forgotten how to care. By Monday morning, Malik's story had already traveled beyond Detroit. Local radio hosts were talking about him. Newspapers were running front-page features, and news anchors repeated his name with awe. But it wasn't the scholarship or the Turner's wealth that captured people. It was the way he said over and over, "I just did what anyone should do." Soon, the Malik Carter story was everywhere. Social media flooded with comments, videos, and strangers tagging their friends. A store clerk in Ohio wrote, "This kid reminds me that good people still exist." A teacher in Florida told her class, "Kindness doesn't need permission." The hashtag, kindness never forgets, started trending nationwide. In a city tired of bad news, this story was a spark. The grocery store where Malik used to work, Mason's Corner, became a small symbol of hope. Customers started coming not just to buy food, but to stand where Malik had stocked shelves and swept floors. Someone taped a note to the counter, "This is where a hero once worked." By the end of that week, the owner announced a new fund, the Carter Initiative, a scholarship for local teens who demonstrated kindness in their community. Within 2 months, 5 students were awarded $1,000 each toward their education. Malik didn't even know until the owner called him personally. "Kid, you might have left the store," he said, voice cracking, "but your spirit didn't." Meanwhile, back at Michigan State, Malik was adjusting to a life he never dreamed possible. Dorm room, laptop, clean clothes, textbooks, food every day. He studied mechanical engineering with a hunger that astonished his professors. He was the first to arrive at lectures and the last to leave the study halls. He tutored other students who struggled, volunteered at a local shelter on weekends, and still called Grandma and Layla every night. Layla's laughter through the phone always gave him strength. "Guess what, Malik? I got an A on my science test. My teacher said I asked questions like an astronaut." He would smile so wide it hurt. "That's because you are one, sis. You just don't have the suit yet." But even with all the good happening, Malik couldn't stop thinking about the bigger picture. He kept asking himself, why did my story spread the way it did? It wasn't just luck. People were starving for goodness, for reminders that small kindnesses mattered, and that thought began to grow into something larger. One evening, during a university panel discussion, Malik was invited to speak about his journey. The hall was packed. Students, professors, reporters, all waiting to hear from the boy who'd walked through a storm for a stranger. He stood at the podium, nervous but calm, and said, "People keep calling me lucky. But luck didn't save me, character did. My grandma always said you don't wait for the world to be kind. You be kind first." The audience went silent. Then they stood clapping, cheering. A professor approached him afterward. "You should consider leadership work," she said. "You have something people listen to." That night, Malik couldn't sleep. He sat under the dorm's lamplight, sketching on a piece of paper. At the top, he wrote 2 words. Kindness lives. It would become a program. His way of paying the miracle forward. Within months, Kindness Lives grew from an idea into an official project sponsored by the Turner Foundation. Malik visited schools, youth centers, and shelters, sharing his story and teaching kids that helping others wasn't weakness, it was power. Emily, now a year older, joined as the program's youth ambassador. "You saved me once," she told him. "Now let's save everyone else together." They traveled to neighborhoods people had given up on, where kids felt invisible, where hope felt extinct. Malik would stand in front of them, hands open, voice steady, saying, "You don't need money to change the world. You just need heart." Soon the program spread beyond Michigan, then across the Midwest. Back home, the East End was changing too. With help from the Turner Foundation and local donors inspired by Malik's story, the neighborhood started a renewal project. Cracked sidewalks were repaired, streetlights fixed. The local youth center reopened for the first time in years, and right outside Mason's Corner Grocery, a mural appeared overnight, a painting of Malik holding an umbrella over a small blind girl in the rain. Across the bottom in bold letters were Grandma Thelma's words, "Do right by folks, even when life ain't doing right by you." When Malik came home for the first time after finals, the whole block waited outside to greet him. They clapped, shouted his name, and waved signs that said "Kindness lives here." Grandma stood at the front, tears streaming, holding her heart. "Look at you, baby," she whispered. "You turned one good deed into a movement." But the true turning point came 6 months later. The Detroit mayor's office called. They wanted Malik to attend a special ceremony at the exact intersection where his story began. He didn't know why, until he arrived. The crowd was huge. Reporters, neighbors, city officials, families. Emily stood beside him, smiling proudly, holding a folded sheet of cloth. The mayor stepped up to the microphone. "A year ago, this intersection was just another forgotten corner of our city. But one young man's decision here reminded us that courage and compassion still exist. Today we rename this place in his honor." The cloth was pulled away, revealing the new street sign, "Kindness Lives Corner." The crowd erupted in applause. Malik stood frozen, overwhelmed, the weight of it all sinking in. "I don't deserve this," he murmured. Emily nudged him. "Yes, you do." The mayor gestured for him to speak, and Malik stepped up to the mic, his hands trembling slightly. He looked at the faces, rich, poor, young, old, and said, "This corner isn't just about me. It's about every person who stopped when they could have kept walking, every grandma who still teaches kindness, every kid who believes one good act can change the world." The wind caught his words and carried them through the crowd. Grandma Thelma wept quietly in the front row. Layla waved at him, beaming with pride. And as the crowd cheered, Malik whispered to himself, "One choice. That's all it takes." Later that night, when everyone had gone home, Malik stayed at the corner alone. He looked up at the streetlight, the same one that had flickered in the storm that night. It glowed steady now, casting light on the new sign. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver keychain Emily had given him, and a second one, a gold one from his graduation ceremony engraved with the words "Kindness Lives." 2026, he held them both, one in each hand. One for where he came from, one for where he was going. And for a long moment, he just stood there under the calm night sky, knowing the city was better, the world was kinder, and his story, his choice, was proof that compassion was still the strongest force there is. But the story wasn't over. Because what started at that corner wasn't just a miracle for one boy. It was a seed that would soon grow into something far bigger than anyone expected. Years passed, but people never stopped talking about that storm. Teachers used it as a lesson, pastors told it from the pulpit, and parents told their children about the boy who gave up his last $3 to save a stranger. What started as one act had become a living echo that refused to fade. Malik graduated at the top of his class from Michigan State, earning a degree in engineering with honors. The day he walked across that stage, Grandma Thelma sat in the front row in her best hat, tears running freely. She kept whispering, "That's my boy," over and over until the applause drowned her out. After the ceremony, Emily ran up to him holding a gold envelope. "Open it," she said, grinning. Inside was a letter from the Turner Foundation board. They wanted him to lead their new national project, Kindness Lives Initiative, a partnership across multiple cities to build safer, stronger communities through education and opportunity. Malik could hardly breathe. "You mean me?" David Turner smiled. "Who better? You've lived it. You turned pain into purpose. We can build programs in every city that needs hope." Malik didn't answer right away. He looked around. The faces, the families, the light of the setting sun. "Then let's start where it all began," he said softly. The following year, The first Kindness Lives Center opened on Detroit's East End, a place for kids to study, learn trades, and find mentors who believed in them. The building was covered in murals painted by local artists, images of helping hands, glowing hearts, and one tall boy lifting a child out of the rain. The city turned out in droves for the grand opening. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and children clung to the railings just to get a glimpse of Malik Carter. He stepped up to the podium, not in a suit but in his old grocery uniform, freshly washed. The crowd went quiet. "I kept this shirt," he began, "because it reminds me who I was before the world decided to see me. But truth is, I didn't change alone. Every one of you helped this happen, because every one of you believed that kindness still matters." The cheers that followed rolled through the neighborhood like thunder. Only this time it wasn't a storm, it was joy. A few months later, Grandma Thelma passed peacefully in her sleep. She had lived long enough to see every dream she prayed for come true. The city mourned with Malik. They held a candlelight vigil outside the Kindness Lives Center. Hundreds of people standing beneath a banner that read, "Thank you, Nana, for raising a good man." Malik spoke only one sentence at her memorial. "My grandmother taught me that goodness isn't luck, it's choice." After that day, he worked harder than ever, determined to honor her memory. The program expanded faster than anyone imagined. In just 3 years, Kindness Lives Centers opened in Cleveland, Chicago, St. Louis, and Atlanta, each one led by former scholarship recipients who had once faced their own storms. News outlets called it the Ripple Revolution. Everywhere, people began performing small acts of good and sharing them with the tag Kindness Lives. A waitress leaving meals for the homeless, a student paying another's library fine, a firefighter rescuing a lost dog. The world seemed a little softer again, all traced back to one rainy night in Detroit. When Malik turned 25, the city council invited him to a special event. He thought it was just another charity dinner, until the mayor took the microphone and said, "Tonight we honor one of our own." The lights dimmed, and on the screen behind him appeared footage of that fateful night. The grainy security video of Malik running into the street, pulling a small girl out of danger as headlights blurred through the rain. Then came clips of his foundation's work, interviews with families whose lives had changed because of him. As the video ended, the crowd rose in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Emily, now grown and studying social work, stood beside him on stage, eyes glistening. "They're naming a bridge after you," she whispered. Malik laughed softly. "A bridge?" "Yeah," she said, "because you built one between who we were and who we could be." Years later, children would walk past that bridge on their way to school and ask their parents who Malik Carter was. And they'd hear the same story told again. The boy who had nothing but still gave everything. Malik never stopped working. He kept traveling, teaching, building, always ending his talks with the same words. "You don't need to be rich to make a difference. You just have to see people." Layla grew up and became an astronaut just like she promised, her name shining in the news beside the Kindness Lives logo she helped design. Every time she looked down from orbit, she said she thought about that little corner in Detroit, the one that started it all. And every year, on the anniversary of the storm, Malik returned to Kindness Lives Corner, now marked by a bronze statue of a young man holding a child's hand beneath an umbrella. He'd place 2 keychains at the base, one silver, one gold, and whisper, still choosing kindness. "Nana." The wind would always seem to answer, brushing through the trees like a voice saying, "Keep going, baby. You're doing right." It's strange how one moment can echo forever. How a decision made on a rainy night by a tired, broke teenager could ignite a movement that healed thousands. But that's how kindness works. It multiplies. And if you ever find yourself at that intersection in Detroit, you'll see a small plaque beneath the statue. It doesn't mention wealth or fame. It doesn't even list dates. It just says, one choice can change everything. And maybe if you stop long enough to read it, you'll feel that quiet pull in your chest. The same one Malik felt when he saw that frightened girl in the storm. The reminder that heroes aren't born in comfort. They're made in the moments when helping costs you everything, but you do it anyway. Because kindness never forgets, and the world never stops needing people brave enough to prove it.